Powerful insights often occur when you least expect them. On Transformative Leadership Conversations, they're at the heart of every episode. Hi, I'm your host, Winnie Da Silva. This latest season on the show has been all about sharing short, focused, and practical leadership ideas and insights, myths worth challenging, and tools you can immediately apply to strengthen your leadership and build more effective teams. But today's episode is different. This is the only guest I'll have this entire season, so you know my guest and her topic is exceptional and extremely relevant right now. The topic? Anti-networking. Essentially, how can we build relationships that create opportunity? So why now? Well, first of all, May is graduation month, which is on my mind in particular because my oldest daughter is graduating from college, like next week. Secondly, we're all well aware that the job market is being absolutely rocked by AI, along with lots and lots of political and economic uncertainty. And what I know from personal experience and in conversations with my clients is this, that if you are starting your career, if you're in the middle of your career, if you're pivoting in your career, or even if you're towards the end of your career, creating a practice around reaching out to and connecting with people is the simplest, although maybe not the easiest, and most accessible way to do all of it. Today's guest is someone who has been rethinking the way we build relationships, create opportunities, and connect with other people in a world that increasingly feels transactional, digital, and disconnected. Carly Valancy is the founder of Reach Out Party and Tether, a tool designed to help people intentionally build and nurture meaningful relationships. She's also the co-founder of Momentum Growth and writes the Substack A Good Omen, where she explores connection, courage, creativity, and what happens when people consistently put themselves out there into the world. And in today's conversation, we talk about why traditional networking feels so transactional, what Carly means by anti-networking, how to write what she calls an unignorable message, the role of courage and rejection in building relationships, the power of planting seeds for your future self, and why reaching out is less about networking and more about becoming the kind of person willing to consistently put yourself into the current of serendipity. Here's my conversation with Carly Valancy. Carly, I am so excited to have you on my show. Really, really am excited. I mean, I know I'm going to do a formal introduction, but I want to just say that, I came upon Tiny Experiments not that long ago, and then I joined Nest Labs. And then, there's all these free workshops that happen at Nest Labs, which are amazing. One of them was yours, and your workshop, I had to write it down because it's such a great name. And the workshop was increase your luck surface area through anti-networking. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to take that workshop. And I'm so glad you're on the show because right now it's May. It's such a perfect time to talk about this topic because so many reasons. I mean, number one, people are graduating from college like my oldest daughter. And so, she needs to start networking and figuring that stuff out. I'm sure she already is doing some of that. We're at such a critical point in time where people are looking for jobs. The job market is really, crummy to say it nicely. And I really have believed my whole career personally and the work that I've done with my clients that talking to people and building your community, building your network organically is the absolute best way to figure out either what you want to do, what job you want to get, like all those things. So when I came across this workshop and came across you, you have such a great system, process, tools, experience that I am just so excited to share your wisdom with my clients and my audience because I think you have so much to add. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's so fascinating because I did a corporate workshop for HP's marketing team yesterday. And it was so, what I realized was just like, it was so easy to talk about the importance of connection. And I think exactly what you said. It's like, oh yeah, throughout your entire career, most people believe what you believe too. And like most people will agree with the very famous trope, like life's about who you know. And, um, but so few of those people actually take that seriously and actually take the opportunity to find and meet and connect and collaborate with the people that you want to find and meet and connect and collaborate with seriously. And so it's funny, when I started doing this work and I started reaching out to people and taking this very simple idea very seriously. I was probably out of college for a year or two when I really started doing it. And back then I always was like, oh, if only I would have started this like in my last semester of college, or, like I think there's just such huge opportunity for not only doing this when you're young so that you can, build up those first couple of connections and opportunities, but the practice of writing to people and asking. And there's so much about reaching out that makes us not want to do it. And getting into that practice early in your career is so beneficial. And I always used to be like, oh man, I wish I started this earlier. But as I've gotten older and with more experience and more of a network, I'm realizing actually how beneficial it is to do now. And the more experienced you get, it just becomes so much richer and more interesting and nuanced. And so I'm like, yeah, I'm super excited for your daughter, and she should totally reach out.
Okay, good. I'll do that.
Yeah, let her know. But I think it's such an amazing opportunity for all of us, no matter where we are at in our careers, to really go deep on this.
And just to add one more thing to that, because I just can't agree enough that a lot of I work with a lot of senior executives, and even then, because I think what I love about what you have to offer is, again, the system and the process and the idea. It's not just one and done. It's not like you create a community and you have like great networks and then check, it's done. And when I'm talking to senior executives and they're kind of figuring out either like, hey, I need to explore another job, or I need another job, or I kind of maybe want to make a career shift. It's like, you have a network, you need to go back and resurrect it, or get it to the point where it's either, if it's warm, get it hot, or whatever it is. And I think that's why what you offer is so timeless.
Totally. And almost more, it's almost more beneficial. I host a mastermind twice a year. It's called Reach Out Party. And I just finished, as we're recording, I just finished cohort 13, and it was amazing to see all of the things that happened to everyone in the cohort over these 2 months. But the people who experienced the most meaningful shifts externally and internally are the people who had the most experience, and who were these, senior level, like VPs and above, and people who have a network and have experience, but really just needed that muscle of networking had atrophied, right? And so needed to kind of resurrect it in a way that felt like fun to them and that they could make time for. And it's so, I just think it's so fascinating, because so much about reaching out to people and cold emails and networking is, yeah, that's something that you do early in your career. And seeing the power of how this work has impacted people who have 20, 30 years experience in their field, it's unbelievable.
So there's so much I want to get into, but maybe let's go right to this word, anti-networking, because I think that and I try, whenever I'm talking with clients specifically about this topic, I try not to use the word networking, but it's hard
It's a very
not
triggering
to.
word.
Yeah, it is. It's a very triggering word. So can you talk about like um what what are you doing that's not networking? Like, you know what I mean? Like why anti-networking and what does that mean to you?
Oh man. I think it means a lot of things. I feel like the easiest way to describe anti-networking is the idea of stripping away everything we have been taught about making professional connections from how we talk about ourselves to how we ask for what we want, from um, the length of our cold email to how we're DMing people on LinkedIn. I think there's this over time there has become this sort of like way of doing things. And it is, for many of us, doesn't work for us. And especially I find for women, for creatives, like it's just the rules that we've been taught about how to network are the same rules that make us feel so like the make us feel like we hate the word. So I think that
There's the salesy thing to it.
yeah, it's transactional. Yeah, it's a very transactional way of getting what you want. And I think that instead of, for many years, I kind of shied away from networking because I was like, well, that's not for me. I don't want to feel transactional. I don't want people to think that I'm being transactional. And so a lot of people who feel that way just kind of end up doing nothing. And what I have discovered in this world of anti-networking is like, okay, instead of doing nothing, what if we did the opposite? And what if we could explore like and question all of these rules that we have been taught, like, oh, your email should be no longer than 3 sentences. Why? Like, what rule, who made that
I don't even know
rule?
about that rule, but
Like, but all of these things, you're supposed to how you're supposed to introduce yourself. And one of the big things we work on in Reach Out Party is like really talk about yourself, like, or write about yourself. When you're reaching out to someone, like, share a memory that you have from an experience, and like the things that make us human and the things that allow people to really instantly connect with you, especially through a screen and through a medium like writing emails or DMs. Um, those things are going to be like the things that make you who you are. And so, yeah, so much of my work around anti-networking is just questioning those rules and actively doing the opposite of them, actively breaking the box of what we have been taught about how to make connections and seeing if they're real. And most of
yeah,
them are not.
exactly. Yeah. And I want to get to the 100-day experiment that you have done and you just recently did again. So I'm going to get that.
Okay.
But this whole idea of like transactional and you're right, it's like I can't remember, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal maybe or some article I read recently where they said that literally the amount of times that we're talking to people like this, I mean, even though it's in a screen, but like even just talking to people, even in this kind of situation, has gone significantly down because we're texting, we're, emailing, that kind of thing. And so, and then, you introduce, AI, into the whole mix. And that can feel transactional because you end up kind of losing your voice. You talk a lot about that too. So can you maybe talk a little bit about, and maybe go deeper because you kind of touched on it just now, but like go a little bit deeper in terms of like how do you have a voice in making it so that it's not transactional? You know what I mean? Like so you mentioned a story, right? A story about yourself so that people feel like they are connected to you, which that's what happens when you tell a story. What else do you do so it's not transactional and it feels real?
Yeah, I think one of the main reasons that keeps us, myself included, from reaching out is like, we've all gotten that impulse that's like when you come across an interesting person, you're like, oh, I should reach out to them. or someone that you know is like, you should really reach out to this person. And then 9 times out of 10, you don't. And I have I've spent a lot of time figuring out how to close that gap of like, when you do have that solid, earnest impulse to reach out to someone, what actually stops you from doing that? And how can we, increase the odds that we actually press send? And so one of those things among many are like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to come across. And so I basically have this framework for writing an unignorable message that I kind of think about every time I'm like, okay, what do I say to this person? And basically, depending on who the person is, I try and hit 3 out of the 4 of these levers. So essentially, like, I would aim to make every email or DM or handwritten letter that I send specific, generous, honest, and relevant. So if it can hit 3 out of the 4 of those, that's how I know that I'm being as human and intentional as possible. So I think the story part would be like specificity. How can you write to someone in a way that could only come from you and only be received by them? So I think that when you ask this question, a lot of the things that have become muscle memory to us float away. So when you're writing an email and you say, "Hey, Winnie, hope you're well," I'm like, wait, why am I saying that? Like, why am I wasting like good capital of the first line of my email? Amazing how many people are like, "Hope you're well." That's, to me, that is something that could come from anyone and could be received by anyone. So too general, take it out. And so the specificity piece is just like, I think that so often we just are not specific enough. So when someone says, as a example of like introducing yourself, instead of saying, I've been working at this startup for 5 years, and I'm really excited about this. Like, how could you be super, super specific? And like, if you're saying like, oh yeah, I work at this company, anyone that works at your company could also say that. So like, how could you kind of just peel back layer by layer a message that could truly only come from you? And then the opposite is true too. Is like, when you're reaching out to someone, like, how could you make it so that you're truly like, my intention is to reach you, Winnie, one person. And I think a lot of messages, especially that are written by AI, are just not able to do that. And so that becomes a really important piece of it, specificity. The second one is generous. I think that this is a really important way of removing the film of like it feeling icky or transactional, because when you can show up in service of someone else's work ahead of your own, it's actually a very generous and thing to do. And it's a really nice way of thinking like, how could my email be a gift in a sea of spammy
Yeah, exactly. Like, I want.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's the second. The third is honest. I think this is a huge rule that I have broken when we talk about anti-networking, because we are just so, we're taught to be performative and kind of buttoned up and professional, and everyone kind of speaks and acts like this, when in reality we're all like insecure and confused and overwhelmed and like, dealing
And need
with
something, or needy in some way, right?
yes. And I think that really being honest about where you are at in your life, whether like you're looking to make a career jump and transition, and just kind of expressing that in a truly human, honest way, can be so disarming for a person on the receiving end. And so like, because we've all been there, right? It's like, it's so easy to resonate with someone who's kind of shrugging their shoulders and just saying like, here I am, I'm a human being. And that could also work with, like being honest about how you are feeling in the moment of sending an email. I think that's worked a lot for me in, when I'm reaching out to, let's say, a coworker who I've lost touch with for 5 years, and it just feels like, wow, it just feels like it's been too long, and just to be honest about saying, I feel weird about sending this because it's been so long. That is very human. It's just the truth. Yeah. And it could be a really great way to make a genuine connection, and something also that like AI is not going to do for you. And then I think the last thing is relevant, and showing up with like relevant value for someone, especially like I love this, there's an Amanda Palmer quote from her book, The
Yes.
Art of
Oh my gosh, I
Asking.
love that quote. Do you have it?
Yeah. The quote is, those who can ask without shame are viewing themselves in collaboration with rather than in competition with the world. It's hard enough to give fearlessly, and it's even harder to receive fearlessly. But within that exchange lies the hardest thing of all, to ask. And I just think it's such a beautiful reframe of like asking, like viewing yourself in collaboration with someone else. And even, when you're asking for an opportunity or asking for a job, a client, like anything, those professional things, I think to realize like, actually, like I have relevant value for this person, and to imagine that potentially the person on the receiving end is like, wow, I've been looking for someone just like you. And I think even mentally, there are things that you can do technically to like make your email, kind of portray that. But mentally, that is such a huge blocker that makes a lot of us want to slam our laptop shut and not ever send it. And that is has been such an amazing reframe to just get me to hit send. And so when, it's obviously not always perfect, but when I can hit 3 out of the 4 of those, and I can read back an email that I've drafted and say, okay, this is specific, generous, honest, relevant. Somewhere in there, I've hit 3 out of the 4 of those. I can be satisfied with the quality of, email or DM that I'm sending to someone. And when you can do that over and over again, you start to get really good at sending these emails, which I guess is a good segue into my challenge.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's unpack a couple of things. First of all, thank you so much for the specificity of what you can do, for the person who's listening right now, that they can actually try out, right? So these are some really solid guidelines that you have tried out that have really worked, which we're going to get into. I especially, I love the generous part. I guess that's the one that resonates with me the most, because that what makes me feel most comfortable myself, reaching out to people, is feeling like I do have, and I guess it goes with the last one too, relevant, is, I'm there to add value to you. You know what I mean? Potentially. I mean, I'm hoping you're going to add value to me. But anyway, it's thank you for those guidelines. And I just really love this idea, because it changes the story that you have around the fact that you're reaching out, right? Because again, I think people think sales, they think, the transactional, and what you just described is really a different reach out, a really different kind of conversation. And then the other thing I just want to say is I love that quote because of the fearlessly receiving too. You know what I mean? Because in some ways that's what's maybe could also maybe get in the way of someone, is just really feeling like I'm here to receive, and I'm here for someone to give me something. And a lot of us, like, that's hard for us to receive.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. There's someone at the end of the reach out party, we were doing like just going around sharing reflections of what this time has been like, and someone shared something that I thought was like really interesting, which is that this is both way deeper than you think it is, and also like not deep at all. You know, there's something about the interesting juxtaposition of like it's not that deep, and also like it really is, and it is an act of courage to reach out. It is it's a very brave thing to do. um yeah, and approaching it with that in mind is like only good things can happen when you do brave things.
Okay, so what's also interesting about you is that you're an actress in maybe in your past. I don't know if you're
In
doing
the
it now too.
past, not
In the past,
anymore.
okay, in the past. I don't know if that helped contribute to that, but anyway, you came up with this 100-day experiment and project in your 20s. You did that, but you recently just did it again, like 10-ish maybe or so years later. um I don't Where do you want to start with that? Because I really want people to hear about what you learned. I mean, and again, this is kind of, I mean, what's fascinating is that this is what you teach, this is what you do, this is what you tell other people to do, but you're also practicing what you preach. And so I think that what I'd love to hear from you is both what you learned, like how you did it, so that people who've never done it before can learn, but then also you being an expert, kind of, and you did it, like what did you learn, because of that, right? I mean, there's kind of two levels there, so
Totally.
where do you want to start with that? Because I think what you've done is really super interesting.
Well, I think like the most fascinating thing is that when I did this challenge, I was coming from a real place of desperation in that I was working as an actor. I was working at a coffee shop. I was trying to jumpstart my career, pretty fresh out of college. And that is the time when people are like, yeah, like network, that's the time. And I really kind of took that super seriously. Um, and at the time, I was just kind of desperate to get out of where I was, and it worked gorgeously for that. I booked a national tour, and I found an agent, an amazing agent, that I'm still very good friends with to this day. I was able to quit my job and find like something that was way better. And all of these opportunities that truly like supercharged my career in literally 4 months. Like I could not believe, to the point where I was then teaching other actors how to do what I did, because I was like, you won't believe it.
Right.
It's unreal.
I gotta tell you about this.
Yeah, totally. And then over the years of continuing to pay attention to this, um, and like really honing my skills around reaching out, I was able to, use this practice as a way to pivot into early stage tech and to kind of shift my entire career in a way that, in a pretty short amount of time, in a way that I was like amazed by. But I kind of stopped because that's what you're supposed to do. Like you networking is a thing you do in your early 20s. And then I had a great job. I had a great network. I was getting married. I'm like, I'm like, cool, I did it. And, and it wasn't until after I had a baby that I was like, starting to question, I wonder, like this worked really well for when I was in my early 20s, and that's not surprising. But I wonder how doing a challenge like this would work for someone who has those, for someone who has the career and has the network and has a child and has no time to be doing this. I think that's the thing. It's like, yeah, like I don't have capacity to do this. And I just started to think about like, what could I learn from doing this at this stage in my life? And, what I have experienced is like, I mean, I went into it thinking like, yeah, the first time I did this, I was very intentionally trying to change my life. This time I was like, that is the last thing I want to do. Like, I don't want to, I want to improve a couple of things. I had specific goals that I went into it with. But I was not thinking that it was going to shift me internally or externally, and in the way that it did. And it was totally incredible. I finished day 100 was April 27th of 2026, not that long ago. And I tracked all of my data, all of my outcomes. I had a 67, yes, with a tool that I created called Tether. It's called Tether. And basically I had, I mean, I originally, when I did this, I tracked everything in like kind of a gross looking Excel spreadsheet. And by the end of it, I realized like, oh, this data isn't really useful to me at all. And so how can I make a tool that's like can keep me accountable to doing this thing and also that is useful?
Yeah, yeah. You get to see the results, and yeah, there's something useful
Totally.
about it.
So yeah, I tracked everything in Tether. My response rate counting rejections was 67%, which worked out to it's oh my God, amazing. And it worked out to getting a positive response 52 times out of 100, a rejection, so like a no, 15 times, and then I got like ignored or no response 33 times. So super fascinating, and a lot of insane opportunities and things came from it and happened because of it. But I think the biggest change was just the internal shift in me that I don't know, I feel like there is no other activity that places you in the current of serendipity more than this. And it doesn't have to be 100 days. Like that's very much kind of like hard mode version of it. But just to intentionally to have a reach out practice in the same way you might have a meditation practice or a journaling practice, like it's totally life changing. So yeah.
And I'm going to put in the show notes a link to a Substack article you recently sent about that, because it shows all the data, it shows all the learnings, it shows all of it. So I think people who are listening would be interested in reading that. So so can you just share like a couple of the internal like what, like before the 100 days, after the 100 days, looking back now, like what's the number one thing that's like, wow, I'm so glad I did it because X, or it was, or unexpectedly this happened, right? Like, could you share like maybe one or two?
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think the most powerful thing that I discovered during this go round was that because I had less capacity, like I couldn't, things, it was working. Like I was reaching out to people and they were saying yes. And I was like, oh, okay. And then there's like you actually have to like do things and make things happen. And, as an example, like I reached out to, the co-founders of this company that I love, and we ended up hosting this huge event in Miami together. And it was such an incredible thing, but like that was like one reach out that turned into like a mountain of work and more, just more. And so I think about like maybe 20 days in, I was kind of like, oh, like and this is, when you're younger and you're doing this, I didn't have experience. I didn't have a website. I didn't have anything the first time I did this. And so you just get a lot less response and yeses. And the more experience and trust you have, like a lot of cool things were happening. So that being said, I was really feeling worried that I was not going to keep this up because it was going too well.
It was so successful.
Totally. And what I started doing was thinking a lot about, because what I realized is that a couple of the follow-ups I sent during this go round were from people that I reached out to the original time when I did this in my early 20s. And so, yes. And so what I realized was like, wow, there's this kind of realization that I had, that I was just so grateful to my past self for sending that email. And these were emails that I was reaching out to people that I just thought were so amazing and cool and did great work, that there was no ask for a lot of those, because some of these people were so far out of my league that I was like, I don't, I don't have anything of relevant value to share with you. But I had sent that email and planted the seed, and there were a couple of people that I followed up with, and literally on the same email thread saying like, well, it's been, 7 years, and that is crazy. And, and then things happened from it. And I was like, oh, if I know that now, who would my future self be so happy that I reached out to now, that maybe I'm not ready to collaborate with or do anything with now? And so a huge strategy of mine, which really came from the fact that I had zero capacity and time to do this, was I started identifying people who I felt were like totally out of my league, but that a future version of me would love to collaborate with. And I like to call these like moonshots. These are the messages that you're like, they're probably not even going to see this. But I started sending literally, and I was relying a lot on the unignorable framework, which was like, okay, how could I be honest with this person and say, I'm not ready yet, but one day I'd love to.
So you put that out there.
Yeah, like literally saying like, I love what you do. Like, how could I show up in service of someone else's work? Like, what do I love about this thing? How could I be super specific and share like where I'm at now? And then be totally honest in saying, I don't think I'm ready yet, but one day it would be a dream to collaborate with you. And I just like had never done that before. I had never seen anyone else like sending those kind of like, this is for my future self, nothing to do now, but planting that seed and remember me, literally. And I got a couple of responses. Like one of my favorite responses was literally just one line that said seed planted. And I was like, wow, this is really, really cool. And so I think it's just that is what I learned the most out of just my sheer lack of capacity to do this and feeling like, oh my gosh, I have no time. Starting to really plant seeds for my future self way more intentionally and thinking about who would 5 years from now me be so thrilled that I sent an email to now.
Well, what I love about this is that, again, what you're proposing and how you're framing all of this is so flexible, right? Because depending on where you are, you can customize this kind of experiment, right? To what
Yeah,
it is
there's no
your needs
excuse
are.
not to do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, oh, I'm too senior in my career. I'm too junior. I'm too busy. I'm not busy enough, right? And I think that that's just so brilliant because so many times we're so our hair's on fire in the moment, right? Like I don't have a job, I need a job right now, right? Or I don't have time, and it's like I'm only thinking about how to get out of this current situation, not thinking of the future. um and I love, you wrote a future letter to yourself a year from now.
5 years from now,
5 years
yeah.
from now. 5 years from now, which I think is I just love that kind of stuff anyway. But like, I think that I can't help but think that that was a strategy that you had to help yourself keep yourself accountable to the future, right? So that this isn't like a one and done thing, even for you, right? That's something that you're going to follow up on.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that the main difference between both of these 100-day challenges is the first time that was very much the mindset. I was like, did it. I did it. I'm done. Like done forever. I never thought that I would do it again. And now I think I'm walking away feeling just like, if I already knew so much going into it, I didn't think I was going to learn anything new. I thought, I'll probably, cool things will happen and whatever, but like this whole future self thing feels like a complete unlock that I was like, wow, that is like a huge, I mean, it's a huge realization for me, and became such a big part of the strategy of doing this. And something that has like become a real core belief of mine, that is like, yeah, why was I thinking about it? Like, I connections, like relationships that we make professionally or otherwise, like this is a lifelong pursuit, you know? And there's so much that we can do to set our future selves up for success, no matter where we are in our careers. And what a beautiful opportunity that we all have to pay attention to that. And so I'm walking away from this challenge so thrilled that I feel like I know less than I did before. You know, I'm just like, there is, and I like to think about it as like, with networking and reaching out, it's like most people barely brush the tip of the iceberg. And what I have been able to do over the past 7 years of going deep into this work is just even to see what's underneath. Like, I feel like my edge is like, I've I've just seen what's underneath of the tip of the iceberg, and there's an endless amount to learn, because that is like, life is made up of the relationships that we keep, and that is, yeah, there's an endless amount of nuance there. So I'm just excited. Yeah.
I want to just go back to the future self part too, because I feel like it just opens yourself up to the possibility of your future self. Because when we think about like our future self, a lot of times it's kind of couched around goals. Like, what goals, what 10-year goals do you have? What 5-year goals? And I think this idea of a future self and the relationships that you might have or develop or connect with in your future self is a totally different kind of lens that you use around your future self. And it's so much more bigger and more creative and more, I don't know, just richer somehow.
Yeah, one of the questions in the application for Reach Out Party is like, imagine it's 5 years from now. We're sitting down for a cup of coffee and you're telling me about all of the amazing things that, you know, has happened. Like, tell me about it. And like, what would you tell me? And I love it when I, you know, kind of see people really go into like, we're sitting at a cafe in Paris and I've ordered a cappuccino. Like, people really kind of go into, and I'm just like, wow, it's such a rare thing that we think about our relationships that we will have in the future, and also the relationship we have with ourself, and like how we want to feel and be, and it's, yeah, it's a really cool opportunity.
Can you tell people who might be interested about this reach out party? So, like, what can you describe it a little bit? Like, what is it? Who is it for? What do you do? Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because it just sounds really, really fun. And so, like, a community to keep yourself accountable, but in a really fun way.
Totally. Yeah. One of the, Kate, who just finished cohort 14 or 13, she described it in such a fun way. She was like, I thought it would be useful, but I didn't think it would be as like genuinely fun. Which I was like, yes, that's the goal. But yeah, Reach Out Party is an 8-week mastermind where, you essentially, come in, choose a challenge for like how often you are going to reach out. Some people are like, I'm going to reach out every weekday. Some people are like, I'm going to reach out twice a week. I think it's like just being intentional about setting that challenge for yourself. And then everyone chooses 3 goals, 2 professional, 1 personal, through which to frame the challenge. And then essentially, we have, it's a container where you're able to stay accountable while also getting better at the craft of reaching out. Like, I read a lot of people's drafts that they share, and provide feedback. And yeah, the Reach Out Parties built on this simple insight that the more you do this, the luckier you get. And when you can do it around a bunch of other really interesting, amazing people, it becomes way more fun. I will say, like, the start of my own 100-day challenge, I started alone, and then Reach Out Party started about like I had probably like the last third of the way to go when we started Reach Out Party, and I I cannot believe how much more fun it was to do this with other people. Yeah. Yeah. I would say that it's really for people who already have a career and already have a network, who feel like they have no time or capacity to do this. Um, it's really for people who uh, are good at network, who are like, maybe they don't like the transactional parts of networking, but a lot of people who do well in it like are like, yeah, I'm good at this. Like, I know how to write an email, whatever. And so yeah, and I think that what I've seen is like it's really a great time to do it is when you are feeling like you're at that transition point, or maybe on the cusp of a transition of like, I'm really starting to think about what is next for me and for my career.
Good. No, that's yeah, and I will put some links in the show notes if people want to learn more or sign up. I know we're ending towards the end of our time. We haven't really explored like what gets in the way, based on the 14 cohorts that you've had and maybe your own experience or talking to other, even clients or whatever. What are like the top reasons that people really resist this, and what can you say to help them get over it?
Oh man, there's a lot of reasons. I think the most obvious one is time. I don't have enough time to do this. I don't have the capacity to do this. I never have enough time. Um, And what often is like underneath that is just the fear of putting yourself out there, being visible, and then being rejected or ignored. And I think it's probably the combination of those two is what is like the umbrella. Of course, underneath that is like, I don't know what to say. I don't know who to reach out to. There's a million objections. There's a million reasons why you shouldn't do it, or why I can't, you can't. And so I think the thing that I would say is that, this reaching out in this intentional way, is not easy, and it takes thought and intention. And it is also the highest leverage thing that you can do in your career, and often the thing that you prioritize last. It is always going to fall under the bucket of important but not urgent. And yeah, I think that it's like anything else. Is like what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it. And it's it can completely change the trajectory of your life, and it takes is just like building the muscle and just kind of jumping in and doing it when you don't feel like it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, no, I love that. It's weird because it's like maybe you were saying earlier, but it's like it's so simple, but it takes time, it takes emotional energy and thought. And yet the benefits can be huge in ways that you don't even imagine, like just as
You
you've described
cannot.
it.
You cannot imagine. You cannot. It's also crazy that I think that's actually, I mean, you I think are saying it in an even better way, which is like it is simple, and also it is complex. And so sometimes I think what stops us is the belief like, oh, this should be simple. Why isn't this simple for me? And when we can't just do it simply, because of all of these things that get in the way, it kind of becomes something that we like just ignore. And so I think that is a really great thing to acknowledge, that it's like it is simple, but it also comes with like a lot of complexities and depth, especially if you're the kind of person that cares about, making like generous and generative relationships.
Well, and the thing is too, it's like I just can't help but continue to think of the word differentiator, because in our world, of, again, not a lot of talking, a lot of AI, a lot of like transactional relationships, and just relationships that we aren't able to go deep on, for whatever reasons, because of lack of time, because of we are so stressed and we have so much to do. And it's like, this is so approachable, and so like goes back to like kind of the roots of being human, that it's really profound in that way. But yet it is something that is, we can all do it. Like there's nothing is stopping any one of us from being able to do this.
Totally. And I think it is in a similar way where AI can kind of make you feel like you have superpowers. That's definitely, I mean, I have a lot of complex feelings about AI, but I'm not anti AI by any means. I use it for so much. And I think that at its best, it's just like, wow, I feel like I've got wings, and there are serious, limitations to that of using AI to the point where it's actually like not, doing good things for you and your career, for your future self. So I think it's the balance of like, it's both and this is a very similar way to think about like, okay, if I can really treat this as a skill and as something that I can get better at, it will, not to quote Red Bull, but it will give you wings. Like it is that feeling of, I feel, especially after this 100-day challenge, I feel like anything is possible. And what a beautiful place to live in. I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah, your view on the world, it sounds like it really changes. So, Carly, thank you so much. This was so much fun to have you on the show. This is such a valuable conversation right now. So thank you for sharing all your wisdom, and we'll put lots of good stuff in the show notes for folks.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Transformative Leadership Conversations. If you're ready to take your leadership to the next level or empower your teams for success, I'm here to help. Reach out to me directly at winnie@winifred.org or visit www.winniedasilva.com to learn more about my work coaching executives, developing critical leadership skills, and helping organizations build effective teams. You can find me on Substack, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And remember, you're always welcome to take a seat at the table where every conversation has the potential for transformative change.